Hi, neighbor. My name is Tim Maudlin, husband, adoptive parent, Bible class teacher, and ambassador of encouragement. I would like to welcome you to a special three-part series of Anchors of Encouragement. For those of you who are regular listeners to this podcast, you might recognize a pattern that I use on a regular basis. Here's a little behind-the-scenes look at how these episodes are created. After I record the episode, whether it's just me or with a guest, I like to go back and listen for an audio clip that I believe conveys the overall idea of that episode. Those clips become the intro for the episodes. Recently, I interviewed Dr. Rick Morton with Lifeline Children's Services. If you haven't listened to that interview yet, it is episode 93. During the post-production for Dr. Morton's interview, I not only found one audio clip I wanted to lead the episode with, I found three. That presented a dilemma: what to do. It's a good problem to have, but it didn't make sense to have three versions of the same interview. So I selected what I considered to be the best audio clip, the one that conveyed the overall theme of the episode, and I went with that one. It still left me with two really good audio clips. Then one morning while I was journaling, I had an idea for how to use all three of them. Each one of these clips spoke about a different aspect of adoption. And it just so happens there was a unique word to describe each clip. So for this three-part series, I'm going to lead with the audio clip and then park on the word that spoke to me and share some observations about that word with you. Sound like a plan? Here we go. Part 3, hard.
Man, when I was in that, particularly the first time, I thought the hardest thing I would ever do was going through the adoption process to get to a child. Then we actually brought a child home.
Mm-hmm.
And what we realized was that getting to a child was the easy part.
Right.
And that the challenge started when the door closed behind us and we were then trying to, become a family and negotiate life.
In our third and final audio clip, Dr. Morton talked about thinking that the adoption plan, in other words, meeting the requirements, finding a birth mother or finding a child, and then adopting that child, he thought that was the hard part. As he discovered, that was the easy part of the adoption journey. That was my experience as well. Let me share a story with you to illustrate this point. Before we adopted, my wife and I had been through years of one disappointment after another as we went through infertility. That was hard. We suffered extreme losses in that journey. Once we got through that, we decided to pursue an adoption plan. We started to educate ourselves. We secured an attorney that specialized in adoption, and we started to do those things that were required by law to help us get to the point where we would one day adopt. That was hard. There were a lot of things that we had to go through, things we didn't understand at the moment, but we soon became educated in. We were instructed that we would seek out a birth mother, which we went through a process to do that. That was hard, especially on my wife, because there were people who, let's say, preyed on potential adoptive parents who are very vulnerable to start with, who desperately want a child. There are people out there who prey on them. And my wife took the brunt of those, for lack of better words, practical jokes. They weren't funny, but people were doing things that were less than ethical, that were very hurtful to her. And it was hard on her, and it was hard for me to watch. Eventually, though, we did connect with a birth mother. We were able to meet with her. That meeting went really well, and she told us that she was going to select us to parent her child. We were thrilled. And so we knew we were going to still go through the pregnancy with her. My wife was going to be able to be present for her appointments and the ultrasound. All of those things were looking up, and we were moving forward with the anticipation of in 9 months to adopt this baby. One day, I received a call while at work from my attorney, and he told me that he had gotten into an argument with our birth mother. She was mad at him and hung up. Based on his experience, he suggested that we begin to look for another birth mother. In his opinion, it was off. We were devastated. Having gone through months of training and now months of searching for a birth mother and finally connecting with her and being weeks into her pregnancy, to be told that it was off just devastated us. We were back at square one. As we tried to wrap our heads around what to do next and processing another loss, several weeks later, I received another phone call from our attorney. He said, the adoption's back on. Come to find out, as we talked with our birth mother, she was never mad at us. In her mind, the adoption was still on, had always been on. There was something that she disagreed with our attorney, and she was mad and hung up on him. But again, it wasn't us, and she was fine. After that phone call from my attorney, I remember turning to my boss and saying to him, today I became a dad. What I had done was surrender complete control of this adoption plan to God, because I didn't know at the time whether she would go through with this, whether she would sign the papers and we would be able to parent this child. I had no idea if she would do that. That was her intentions, but I knew from our training things can change. Birth mothers can change their minds, and it's within their rights to do so. But I decided that day to give it all to God and to be the best dad I could be for the remaining of the pregnancy, with the hope that she would sign those papers and we would have our son. That's not to say that the remainder of the pregnancy was easy either. There were still ups and downs. I think adoptive parents will understand when I say this journey can be a roller coaster ride. There are some extreme highs and there are some extreme lows. We still face those, but I was facing those with a different mindset. And when we got to the hospital just before our son was born, we were again hopeful that she would sign those papers, and she did. We were on cloud nine. We were excited. Our friends were excited, and we began our journey. We thought the hard was over. Little did we know, we were wrong. It wasn't long that we started to experience challenges that I've talked about on this podcast. Challenges that we wouldn't come out to find until 17 years later were the result of trauma our son had experienced in the womb. It was then that we discovered, though, who our true friends were. I've talked about this on the podcast many times as well. We were shamed into the shadows. Our adoption journey became really hard. It was hard to navigate, it was lonely, and we didn't know what to do. And 17 years later, it became necessary for our son to go to residential. There we started to understand what we had been dealing with all these years, and for solutions to help him navigate the challenges that, through no fault of his own, he was experiencing. What I would like to do in this episode is to consider this word hard with you and consider the different feelings and emotions that we were going through. I have 4 points to share with you. Number 1, the adoption journey at times can be heavy. You can feel heavy-hearted. Number 2, there can be a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxious moments in this journey. As a result of that, number 3, you can feel restless. There have been a lot of sleepless nights. And because of that, number 4, you're drained, you're depleted. But I don't want to leave you there. I don't want to leave you in the hard without a solution. Let's flip the script and consider another way to look at hard, because I believe there is a solution to this. It's a solution that has worked for me. Rather than feel heavy or heavy-hearted, there's hope. Rather than being anxious, there are answers. Rather than being restless, you can be restful. And rather than being drained and depleted, you can be determined and you can be dependent. Now, how is this possible? Let's get to your daily doable, because there is a solution. It's a solution that I've leaned on, and it has helped me in the hard. I want to draw your attention to the book of Matthew, chapter 11, beginning in verse 28. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." If you remember back to the story I shared before my son was born, the day my attorney called to say the adoption was back on, I was applying these verses then. What I mean by that is I surrendered control to God. I gave it to Him. His shoulders are much broader than mine. He can carry this burden for me. It's something that, unfortunately, I forgot early on in our adoption journey once we had our son. But I have since realized that that is the solution, to give it to God, to let Him help you navigate these challenges. He will teach you. He is humble and gentle. He will give you rest. That's the solution to hard. You can have hope. You can have answers. You can be restful. You can be determined and dependent upon Him. That's all for this episode. I would encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, to listen to the other two parts of this series, episodes 97 and 98, where we talked about heroes and grief. I hope these episodes have encouraged you and will bless you in your adoption journey. Until next time, this is Tim, encouraging you to do what you can now.